Hi Lacrosse fans, welcome back to episode number 8 of the Sticks and Picks Lacrosse podcast presented by Lacrosse Unlimited. You can find the best lacrosse equipment, apparel, and lacrosse footwear at lacrosseunlimited.com. They have provided all things lacrosse since 1990. I'm your host, Will Pechnig, alongside co-host Jake Fox. In today's episode, we talk to one of the greatest players to ever play the game of lacrosse. His introduction in the interview speaks volumes to the caliber of player he was. He won at every level he played at and remains one of the most humble lacrosse players alive. This interview is full of awesome stories throughout his Hall of Fame career. Here we go. He's one of the greatest players to ever play the game. He's a Founders Cup champion. He's a 2-time Mann Cup champion, a 6-time Major Series Lacrosse scoring champion, a 3-time Major Series Lacrosse MVP. He is second all-time behind John Tavares in Canadian Senior A points with 2,121. He's a 6-time NLL All-Star. He has 2 NLL championships, a 2-time World Box champion for Team Canada, a World Field Lacrosse champion, an MLL champion, a Minto Cup champion as a coach, a 4-time Canadian University Field Lacrosse champion as a player, and 2 times as a coach. The current assistant coach of the Colorado Mammoth and head coach of the Junior A Whitby Warriors. Please welcome Shawn Williams.
How you doing, guys? Thanks for that.
What a freaking intro. Jesus, Willie.
I'm old, man. I'm old.
Oh, that's awesome that we have you on. We're really excited to talk about you and highlight some key points in your career. So we're going to dive right into things and talk about growing up around the Redmen and getting to watch your dad play for them and how you kind of got involved with playing the game of lacrosse.
Yeah, ever since I was born, I was in a rink, and I think, I was in fact born while my dad was still playing junior for Scarborough. So that just rolled right into being a little gaffer on the Redmond Luther Vipon floor, barely being able to stand up kind of thing, right? And, I do have vivid memories of being in Luther Vipon, although I was still pretty young. And I think my dad played there until about 79, and maybe 1980 he moved to Scarborough. Scarborough got a Major Series team as well. So that's where most of my memories start coming back from there. But I do actually remember the smell of that Brooklyn Redmond dressing room, which is down in the dungeon. It's different now, but I totally remember being down there and just watching and just taking everything in. Pretty cool.
What was minor for you? So you played minor for Toronto and Scarborough. So what was that like?
Yeah. So I started in the beach 1977 or 78. Guys like Jason Clark and Derek Collins and Matt Giles and the triplets, Matty McLean and Foster and Jesse and Peter Dunnett. Lots of guys that have had great NLL careers and had sniffs there as well. Scarborough didn't. I grew up in Scarborough, but my dad started playing for the beach. He was a Toronto boy, and as he moved to Scarborough, he just said, "I want you playing lacrosse." So we drove down to Q Beach and played it in the outdoor box. And then I think it was my last year at Tyke. I think so that's 8 years old. And we lost in the Ontario Championship to Brampton. Kevin Haynes and the boys, lots of battles with them. And then Scarborough, they had started a novice. So my dad just thought it was, it was just the right thing to do was move to Scarborough. And he took over there and finished the rest of my minor career in Scarborough.
Who went to their first lacrosse game younger, Dyson? Because he said he was about a week old when he went to his first game, or you?
Yeah, I haven't been told, but I do remember vividly. Actually, it was my second year in the NLL, and I was playing for Buffalo, and we went to Bromdale Toronto Rock game. I think it was like the week after he was born, and my good friend of mine, he was a head bartender at the Hot Stove Lounge in the old gardens there. So Tamara had to go feed him, so he was fed in the hot stove, and we hung out down there, and pretty cool experience for him as well that he can't remember. But
oh, that's awesome. So after Scarborough, you went and played Junior A for Brampton. What was that experience like? Were you guys in the MEM?
Yeah. No, actually, it was being renovated, so it kind of sucked that way. I stayed in Scarborough. Scarborough was a junior B center, and Patty O'Toole was my goalie, and there are lots of awesome players, and I didn't want to go anywhere. And the Beaches got a junior A team, and I chose to stay. I wanted to finish out and win Founders, and we almost won it my first year junior, and we ended up winning our second, and then we got this great idea that we should be a junior A team. But meanwhile, we lost 7 or 8 21-year-olds. We lost a bunch of kids that were on our team from Whitby, like Jonas Dirks, and guys from the Beaches went to the Beaches. So we ended up with about 8 of us left, and we took our alums for 2 years in junior A. They went back to junior B, so I was a free agent, and Brampton was coming off I think they lost in 7 games in New West. And I chose Brampton, and I think a little complacency set in for those guys, and we faltered out and limped out of the playoffs. I think we lost 4-1 to St. Catharines after a big brawl in the stands in St. Catharines.
What was it like winning the Founders? I gotta imagine that was a pretty cool feeling doing it with all your buddies.
Yeah, it was amazing. And I think we lost 1 game that year, so that was pretty cool. We were chasing, the 85 Scarborough team was loaded with all pros like Paul St. John and Scotty McMichael and all these guys, and Patty O'Toole's brother, Mike O'Toole, who was an awesome hockey player as well. He played at Michigan State with like Rod Brindamore. So we always tried chasing that team and wanted to beat. I think they were undefeated there last year, and we ended up losing 1 in the playoffs, but it was still a good run, a great experience, and like you said, playing with all your boys was awesome.
Yeah, certainly, and winning a championship is always so special. And speaking about championships, you went on to kind of your field lacrosse, NCAA career, whatever we want to call it, but you took the Canadian route. Why did you decide to go to Brock, and was NCAA an option back then for Canadians, or how did that all work out?
Yeah, it just definitely wasn't as, there was options for us, but you'd really much had to do everything on your own. You didn't have all these outlets that all these kids have now, which is awesome, and it's great experience, and it's great for our guys now that have these options, and lots more coaches looking. But I did have some sniffs, and but like I said, it was just kind of like you got older, and I was in grade 13, and actually it was a victory lap year, so I was in grade 14, and we were allowed to do that back then, which was, I think, you got to bring grade 13 back I'm a high school teacher, and I think it's something necessary because kids these days, they have to grow up and make all these adult decisions when they're not ready for that. But so I did have some sniffs, and I chose Brock because they didn't have football. I was a football player in high school, and I got recruited to a couple schools in Canada. And obviously I'm a realist. I said, I'll have I can play there and, hopefully do some good for a team. But I knew it wasn't going to be anything down the line for me football wise. So I actually ended up choosing Brock, because they didn't have lacrosse. And I said, if I choose to quit football, I can't go to a school that has football. So chose Brock, and they end up having a pretty good, successful lacrosse team. And so I got to walk into that. And then, 5 years later with 4 championships, it was an awesome experience.
Yeah, I was going to say you won 4 straight championships, all-time leading scorer, and then you ended up going back to coach. What did it mean for you to give back to the school and then winning, obviously, national championships as a coach there? Yeah,
it was a natural progression. It was such a tight-knit group, and as when you first start, you basically, my first few years, you didn't really have any support from the school. It was like we were running it ourselves, and as you get older, and we took it over, so we had more. Definitely, it was ours. So you didn't want to let go of it, and lucky enough, I got to coach for another 3 years there. One as assistant, and I got head coach twice, and I didn't want to not coach there, but we ended up moving to Whitby, and so that made it tough on going back and forth. And obviously, there wasn't a lot of money coming in from Brock to pay for all the gas and stuff. So I just had to let go, but left it in good hands with guys that I played with, and they ended up winning a few more championships, which was pretty cool.
Looking back at Kufla when you played and when you coach, and looking at it now, because obviously being in the Whitby area, you get to see some of big schools around you. What are some of the big differences you've seen in the game?
I think it's definitely, there's lots more, field players. When we played, we had a couple of good schools that were loaded with some talent. And now it seems to be that there's a lot more players in various schools. And it's definitely a lot more parity, which is awesome. I catch a bunch of games on. Usually I make it down to Brock for one game for sure, usually alumni weekend, and then always follow it and watch online as much as I can. And, lots of schools are in it now, and lots of parity and lots of good players, man. It's a good quality product, and it's just something that's kind of forgotten about. But I definitely, I don't, I let all my kids know that, I coach in high school, that it's not as bad as you think. Like, everyone thinks, oh, I'm just going to go play for this. It's like, you might not make it. So, for all those guys out there, it's still a really good product, and it's a good stepping stone to further your career.
Yeah, certainly. And there's quite a few National Lacrosse League players playing in that CUFLA Canadian University Field Lacrosse level right now. And we're going to stick with your field lacrosse career. We're going to go into your MLL career and kind of talk to us about the jump from playing CUFLA lacrosse going into the MLL game.
You know what? It was, for me, it's always lacrosse. And I think the biggest, is playing the international game and playing against Americans. And I had the first time experiencing that in 1999. They had a world challenge in Baltimore. And so playing with that speed and against that speed, that's what really got you ready. But, I think it's just, obviously, the CUFLA games was a much slower than the international game or the MLL game, but it's being able to adapt and playing and just knowing your surroundings and being aware and things like that. That's where, that's the biggest difference, that some people can't make that jump. But obviously I was fortunate enough to be able to make those jumps and got to play. Lucky enough that, MLL wasn't a big thing on my list, because my box, I love playing summer box, and a lot of the guys, were half-timers with the box while the MLL season went on. I was like, I don't even, I'm good without it, and I'll just follow you guys and all my buddies playing, and especially in like Rochester and stuff. But then the Toronto Nationals came along and got the opportunity, and so we got to play there 2 years, which is really cool.
Yeah, and you guys won the title in 2009. Was that the one, were you guys in Annapolis playing out of the Navy Court Stadium that year?
Yeah, it was unbelievable. Unbelievable. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure I was down there with Edge, and we were in the locker room after, because it was like you, Zawicki, June. So like there's a bunch of you guys on that team.
Eric Thompson, Joe Walters. Yeah, it was. We had a good mix of young talent plus a couple of us old guys, or older guys anyway, right? And it was unbelievable to see. Credit all goes to Dave Huntley, who put the team together and allowed some of us, non-traditional kind of MLL guys to play, and he mixed us all in with some traditional guys, and it was awesome. We, obviously, were fortunate enough to end up winning.
Yeah, exactly, and especially winning for your hometown professional team is always something truly special. We're gonna have some fun here. We're gonna do our word association game. So basically, Jake's gonna give you a word. You got to think of someone who comes to mind that you've come through or know about in your lacrosse career.
All right.
The first word is GOAT, greatest of all time.
Greatest of all time. I got a few, but I think the one that comes to my brain all the time when I think about this is Gary Gate. I think for a lot of us in that my age group, I think he was the one guy that, especially being a lefty, was like, we couldn't believe some of the stuff he was doing. And, he was the guy that we were emulating in the backyard. And there's other guys that he did, but I just, constantly remember trying to do things that he was doing. And obviously couldn't do half of it, but Gary always just trying to push that way. But lucky enough, I got to play with him in Brooklyn my first year. And then a little bit with Team Canada. And then he ended his career in Rochester with us was pretty cool. But I have to go and add in Tavares for obvious reasons, and getting to play with him and seeing his makeup and obviously everybody it's those two are usually 1 and 2. And then I think another guy that has to come in, but usually don't put this guy because it's your own age, but is Junior. I have to put him up there, and getting to see him day in, day out, playing with him for, 10 years or so plus. I would put him up there in that category as well.
The next one is goal scorer.
Yeah, I would go. There's 3 of them right there for sure. They're obviously awesome in all their own right, and they all, Junior is closer to Gary, I guess, but Tavares is just so crafty. But they're all crafty. There's you brought up one that's maybe is an obscure one that people don't talk about, but as a pure goal scorer, man, Jeff Sawicki was awesome. I got to play with him in Brooklyn for a year, maybe 2, and I just love sitting there and I could find him and pass the ball. I had 5 assists without even blinking.
Assists or playmaker?
Playmaker, play with lots of great guys, and Junior's not talked about like that, but he's a great playmaker. But I had an awesome year in 2009. I was traded to Brampton, and playing with Josh Sanderson. He's probably by far the best and best vision. Guys like him, he comes to mind right away. Colin Doyle was a great feeder as well. He'd draw, dump, and he was awesome at the 2-man game. Those two come up in my mind right away. Dan Dawson as well, got to play with him on that same team. So those 3 come to mind.
Detail-oriented.
Detail-oriented. That's a good one. I'm going to go with plain. Definitely, Shooter was like that, man. He was so technical, and he was just always on, very detailed. Coaching-wise, the first coach that was the most detail-oriented I've ever seen was Eddie Como, and I think he started instilling the details more to us, that technical side where we just all thought, oh, we're good and we're play, but I think he was the one guy that kind of I think he changed how we approach games and all the video he did and stuff. So I'll use him as well. I'm not good at just giving one answer, I guess, guys. Sorry.
No, that's good.
I've lived too long.
The next one is Waterbug.
Waterbug. Man, Tracy Koleski comes to brain. He was awesome, especially watching him play junior with a wood stick. He'd take a face-off wood stick. He'd slash anybody, grab a loose ball, around the world, score. Like, he was awesome. I think he's the first guy that came to my mind as a Waterbug for sure, and obviously a great player.
Brick wall.
I'm going to go with my boy Patty O'Toole. Growing up, I was a couple years behind him, so I didn't get to play any minor with him until but junior got to play a bunch of years, and he did his job day in, day out for us. And obviously with Rochester, he was our brick wall, and won us a championship in 2007.
Tough.
Scotty McMichael. My first year was his last year, and not too many people know this, but he was dying of leukemia as we were playing. Like, he told everybody he was fine, and told all our owners and executive in Brooklyn that he was good, but he just wanted to go out the way he wanted to go out. And watching him get ready for battle, and then after knowing what he was going through, holy moly, man, you want to talk about tough. That was tough.
Stone hands.
Stone hands.
Uncle Frick?
He's actually not too bad. Frick's he's got some stone hands. I don't want to make fun of anybody, come to think of it. No, I'm going to pass.
We interviewed Bonter, and he put himself in that category.
Yeah, see, man, like, you know the size of him. There's no way I could call him stone hands.
The next word's agitator.
I'm going to go with my boys. It's going to be another double, but it's going to be their brother combo, Shawnee and Scotty Evans. They would agitate. They agitated everybody on your team, away from your team. They agitated their parents, everybody, man. They're agitators. Beautiful guys, 2 of my best friends, but they are agitators.
Your son said the same thing. I find that really funny.
Wow, yeah, he knows Shawnee very well. Shawnee lived with us for about a year.
And the last word, I always end it because it's my favorite word, jackass.
Jackass. Is jackass is in a good way or a jackass way, like a bad?
Either way, like you can
Either
throw
way.
Toller under the bus for this one if you want.
He's definitely, my wife would say he's the biggest jackass, but he'd be a jackass. You know, if we're talking about funny guys, he's definitely up there as a jackass and getting shit going, as you would say. But guys like Kenny Millen, he's one of the funniest guys I've ever played with. He could mimic anybody, anytime, anywhere. He would have you rolling, crying. And I'm gonna say, not too much of a jackass, but as a funny guy, Chris Schiller, man, he was straight up deadly comedian.
Well, that's awesome. I get a good kick out of the Evans. Not only Dyson said it, but I'd say probably 75% of the people that we interviewed have brought up the Evans brothers as one of their agitators. So it's pretty funny.
I guarantee you they would bring each other up because I've seen them fist fight.
That's awesome. We're going to get into your NLL career. You had 281 games played, 469 goals, 761 assists for 1,230 points. You currently sit in sixth place in the all-time points in the NLL. You also picked up 1,185 loose balls in your career, which for me is pretty impressive as an all-star caliber player like yourself. We're going to go back to 1998 when you played your first National Lacrosse League game for the Ontario Raiders. Can you kind of talk about that experience and how cool that was, kind of playing in your hometown professional team?
Oh, without a doubt, man. It was surreal. You know, I actually tried out for Buffalo a couple times, and that was back in when they had a quota on Canadian players. So you're battling for 10 spots against everybody, and you know, I was told I almost made it a couple times, whatever, and that's fine. And that's what just makes you hungry and hungrier. And you know, then all of a sudden Hamilton, they get a team, and all of a sudden we're in it, and we're playing Rochester, and never forget. And it's like, welcome to the jungle's on, and I'm just jacked, and I run out, and they got all this big smoke, and I take 2 steps, and I hit the turf. I almost bailed. So that kind of just eased me up a little bit, but I almost bailed on my first run out. But I got better as I got older. But I'll never forget that. But we were in a tight game, and I'll never forget that it was Kurt Milewski scored the winning goal, and he literally, I don't know how my dad got to do it, but he stood on the corner like you would at any little arena. And I remember seeing my dad right in the corner, standing up, and then Kurt Milewski basically jumped right on him. My dad wanted to punch out Kurt, but they became good friends after too. But that was great first game memory for sure.
After 98 with Ontario, you ended up winning the 99 NLL championship with The Rock. How special is that, especially, you know, being a Toronto guy and winning it with your hometown team? Yeah,
it was again, it's surreal. You know, anytime, you know, I grew up in Scarborough, and it's about a 20-minute, you know, subway ride down to the Gardens, and I used to go there as a kid. We were probably 9 or 10. We'd go watch Leaf practice, and then hang around downtown Toronto and go to the Marley game at 1:00. And I don't think any parents are going to let their 9 or 10-year-olds down doing that anymore. But that was back in the good old days. And so obviously growing up, the Gardens was like a church for us, right? And getting to play lacrosse in there, wow. And then having 15,000 people, even crazier than having all your friends and family. And then, like I said, you know, with my friend, good buddy that basically ran the hot stove lounge. Like, so we thought we were on top of the world, and then winning it, and then all walking into that hot stove, and all your high school friends and all your family are there, and they're already drinking out of the cup. And it was awesome feeling, awesome memories.
I got to ask, how do you feel about the new cup compared to the old cup?
Well, if I win it, I'll be fine with it. But obviously it's not the same. But, you know, it's part of life. Everything changes, and I'm sure everyone finds a way to enjoy it. But whatever that trophy is, you still want to win it, right?
You were a 6-time NLL All-Star. What was it like going to All-Star games back then? Obviously, that's not a thing anymore. It's being talked about coming back. But I remember, I think I went to one of the last ones that was in, I think it was in Mohegan Sun or something like that. But talk about kind of the experience of going to those All-Star games.
Yeah, it's one of those things you want to be there, obviously, because that's it means that you're having a pretty good season, and you're getting recognized, and it's also meant a good weekend away, and to see a lot of your good buddies, and and it was a chance to kind of just relax and enjoy the weekend in a different light. And obviously getting to go to a different city and being part of festivities, awesome feeling. And they were tons of fun for sure.
In '07, you went to the NFL Championship with Rochester. Again, it's kind of one of those things where you get there, every time special, and then you're waiting to see, it might be your last championship you go to, something like that. So taking everything for granted.
You know what? When I went to Rochester after Buffalo, I got on a team, and we thought we could win every year. Honest to God, it was building to that '07, and I think stand corrected, but I think we went 14 in a row in the regular season to go 14-2, and then we went obviously 3-0, so we're 17-2 overall with 17 straight wins. We thought we were invincible, man. That was the tightest group I've ever been a part of. Obviously, lots of people say that when they're on championship teams, but it's true, and we're all still really really close friends. And we had a big thing about funny enough with that team, and I think Reggie texted last night. Last night was an anniversary of the time we won it in '07, and there's a hashtag like No Borders, and that was always the big running joke because some of our coaches used to think that all the Canadians and Americans used to hate each other, but we just had such good banter and just always chirped each other that it seemed to them that it was getting out of hand, but that's how close we were, and that's the way we loved each other, and just no one was safe in that room, and lots of good characters and lots of unbelievable players. And we actually had to go on the road for that one. We obviously you're 14-2, you think you're gonna walk through and host a championship, but Circus came into town and booted us out of our building, and we had to go on the road to Phoenix and or Scottsdale, wherever it is there, and play there. But we weren't worried. We said, "You know what? We're good. Just play anywhere." So.
You obviously played in places now that don't have teams anymore. A place like Edmonton, you got to play in. Could you see a team like Edmonton or a team like that coming back to the NL? What are other cities that you might have played against or that you see coming back to the league?
Yeah, I think Boston was a pretty cool spot. It's I don't know what happened there for fans wise. They weren't, it wasn't horrible fans wise, but that would be a great city, and it's obviously with their history of sports, it would be really cool. But I think Minnesota is the team that definitely got robbed in the deal. They were getting great crowds, and it was awesome atmosphere to play in all the time, and great barn too. So those two for sure pop out into my brain, and obviously there's lots of places you would like to see it go, and just for the possibility of it catching on, but I think wherever you are, it's winning helps anything, right? So that's the tough part about expansion is, you might have a couple rocky years before you can get some extra fans in for the wins, because people just want to see some type of win, right? Yeah, but that's a tricky thing about expansion, but it's I like where it's going, and I like all the what's happening, and the possibilities are crazy.
You ended your career taking on more of a leadership role, you would say. What was it like watching some new young talent come into the league at that point?
Oh, you know what? It was awesome. Obviously being in Buffalo my last little bit, and watching Dane Smith and him start as a transition player and not playing NEO, and and he was okay with it, and just kind of learning the ropes and just learning how to play and finding himself and stuff. Right? It's awesome to watch guys like that, and take a different role and accept a different role for the betterment, and then a couple of years later he scores over 70 goals, and people would have thought, well, why would you have him playing defense? Defense. And he's like, well, he was fast. That's what Dare said. Well, you're fast and you can get breakaways, so go score goals the easier way, right? 5-on-5 is tough. So obviously he's the one guy that kind of sticks out for sure as I got older and watching the young talent come in.
Yeah, certainly. And we're going to get into your major series lacrosse career, which I was blown away by when I looked up your stats. And I knew you were a great player, but when I looked at your stats and from everything that I've heard about playing the major series and how grueling it is to play in that league, your stats are just incredible. Second all time, right behind John Tavares, sorry. And I just got to ask you, I remember at the beginning of your career, Dyson brought up a story with us earlier today, but before we get into that, I'm going to ask you, what was it like for you to play with your dad at the beginning of your major series career?
It was awesome. He with me being a rink rat and being around all of his teams and being a ball boy, and I got to watch so much lacrosse. And I remember a guy named Red Crawford, and he was probably close to 50, still playing with my dad. And he was an old Brooklyn Redman as well, but then he ended his career in Scarborough. And then his boys, Gary and Wayne, came up and played with him. So my dad always said that one day we got to do that. And then my dad's career got cut a little shorter than he wanted, but he says, whenever you get there, I'll figure out a way to to get back into some shape so we can play together. And lucky enough, it was the Brooklyn Redmen and Pete Vipon, the coach, and Paul Cotton, the owner. They were accepting. There's a couple of exhibition games we were involved in. The first time, actually, funny story, I don't know if Dyson knows this, but the first time we were set to play together, we were playing Peterborough preseason in Lindsay. And so Vipon, who played with my dad and then coached my dad as well, he said, "Oh, well, Greg, we'll just let you ease into it a bit. So, you may get we'll get you on once or twice in the first type of thing." I think I had like 2 shifts. And there was a little scuffle, and Johnny Fusco was in a scuffle Sunday, so I go in, and then I remember just getting grabbed by big Jamie Delaney, and I'm like, man, I can't fight. And sure enough, we ended up in a fight, and because it was preseason, we got kicked out. I'm looking at my dad still on the bench, and I'm going to the dressing room, and talk about reverse roles. My dad was a little bit of a fighter back in his day, and so our first game, I didn't step on the floor as a shift with him, but I got thrown out. So he was just more mad because he had to do it again and to get himself ready. So lucky enough, we got to do it again, and it was awesome experience. And then obviously when you have kids, you think, I'm going to try to do this. And obviously, lucky enough to play with Dyson one game.
Yeah, well, let's go to that then. In 2017, Dyson was lucky enough to get called up, and you kind of jumped out of retirement for that one and were able to play with your son. Talk about what that meant to you, and kind of seeing that reverse of what you did.
Yeah, I think it's just I'll give credit to my dad just because just how much he cherished that. And obviously when you do it, it's like as you're the kid, you don't think it's really cool. And then especially when you're a father, holy moly, man, it's on a different level that you're actually getting to suit up and your kid's not only your teammate, he's your brother. Sorry, it's not only your son, he's your brother for that game, right? You're going to war with him for 60 minutes, and that was a pretty cool feeling.
Going back to your play career now, this has to be some sort of record, or Will might have made it. Did you get 21 points in a game against Oswego?
Yeah.
It's an MSL record that will never be touched again. Mark my words.
Yeah, and it's funny enough that Dyson's actually part of that record. Where so I came back. I was in Baltimore actually when I talked about that '99 for that Team USA, Team Canada Challenge, and Dyson's mom at the time. Dyson's mom, she phones me. She was kind of late for something, and I'm like, okay, so let's just hold off on this. Let me get back to Canada, and then we'll figure things out. And sure enough, got back, and we were pregnant with Dyson, and I was absolutely out of this world jacked. I think I was 24 or something. And I'm like, here we go. My wife now, she probably wasn't as happy as I was at the time, and I understand why. But at any rate, I had to go play a game that night, and that was the night. The night I found out about Dyson is when I got lucky enough to get that record.
That's absolutely awesome. That's so cool story. 2000, you won a Man Cup with Brooklyn. A lot of guys on that team. Again, I believe I know Sudsy that's the 1 year he missed, and he regrets that. But you guys had a hell of a team, and talk about going through that grind of a full season, 7-game series, and all that, and winning that manner.
Yeah, you know what? Unreal, because I think that the biggest thing for us was actually beating Brampton in the semis, to be honest with you. And that was our biggest crowds too, was that Ontario final. and watching guys like John Fusco, our captain, and him battle through everything. He was just beating up warrior, and he was trying to pass on the torch to all us younger guys, and guys like Eric Proney, and trying to do everything you could, because you knew for those guys that they're pretty vocal about it, that they're pretty much done. So you're trying to do anything and everything you could. And the TSN turning point, I think, for us was we were down, I think, 2-0 to Brampton, and Glenn Clark went off and in the dressing room, went nuts, and he smashed the Gatorade off, and it went all over Powder's stuff. Like, Powder's gear was all over him, and no one said a word, because no one's gonna look twice at Clarky, man. He'll just knock you right out, right? And we went out, won that game, and went on, and we ended up beating Brampton in 7. And actually, I'll never forget Stevie Fennell. He guarded me all series, and he was just a warrior, and man, just beat you up. And Jimmy Veltman in Game 7 tried stirring it up and getting something going for his team, and he decided that he'd pick on a rookie, Gavin Prout, and Gavin Prout knocked him out. And I just told Stevie Fennell, man, this is over. And it was. And we went on and played Victoria, loaded team, and you know what? It was just kind of like, we're good, and we're good with whatever comes at us now after beating Brampton. And sure enough, we ended up going 4-0, which no one thought was going to happen for sure.
You went out west for 1 year to play with Quitlam. How was that?
Yeah, you know what? That was me being a total lifer Brooklyn guy that I wanted to be. It was a tough decision, but bringing up Kurt Milewski earlier, we drove home all the time from Rochester and hung out on Sundays in Rochester, and then would drive home Mondays. And so we'd have lots to talk about and he was on me and on me and on me. And John Grant was going out there, and then he got on me, and then Tracy Kleski was going out there, and he was on me, and I just couldn't do it. I didn't want to do it. We just got Troy Cordley in to coach us in Brooklyn, and I was like, I can't leave. And then finally, I just said, if it's ever going to happen, it's going to happen now. And probably one of the best things, hardest but best decisions I ever made. And unfortunately, we lost to Victoria in the semifinals, but what an experience out there. And it's a different set out there, man, with the mountains and all the golf you do, and golfing on game days, and you name it, we did it. And it was a pretty cool experience that I'll never regret for sure.
And then, of course, 2009 Man Cup champion, and you were actually the MVP of the Man Cup with Brampton. Again, you saying you're a lifelong Brooklyn guy, which I think most people recognize you from wearing the Redmond jersey back in the day. What was it like going to Brampton, change of scenery, change of locker room, and hoisting that cup again? Yeah,
it was actually, as hard as it was. That's another story with leaving Brooklyn, but it was a seamless transition. Obviously, played with a bunch of guys on Brampton, and they're all professional, man. Like, from the goalie all the way to everyone was just all professional. So it was just like, you knew you were going there to prepare to play Peterborough, and then to hopefully beat them and to go out west. And and Troy Cordley was probably the biggest one. That's why one of the biggest reasons why I went, because we were really close back then, and we still are. But it's I always said we always kind of talked. I wanted to win one together, and fortunately we won in that crazy overtime Game 7.
Well, that's certainly awesome, and I mean your MSL career is just unbelievable. I mean, again, second all time in MSL points, and to look at the names that are behind you, it's just incredible to see how amazing of a career you had and how grueling those summers actually were. So we're gonna have some more fun here. We're gonna do a teammate challenge. So Jake's gonna ask you a few different questions about teammates, and you got to just try to think of someone who comes to mind for them.
All right.
We're thinking about like high school superlatives, basically. I know it's been a while since you're in high school, but we'll see what you can do here.
He's a high school teacher.
Phys ed teacher though.
Funniest teammate.
Funniest teammate. I'll go back when I think I said a little bit, but I'll say Kenny Millen, and I'll tie with Chris Schiller. They're different funnies, but they're, man, I like rolling. Kenny Millen had you crying, and Schiller he'd stir everybody up, and he was funny. Actually, if I could tell a quick story, we had Chris Schiller was so awesome, and he was our kangaroo court judge in Rochester. And we had a rookie. I'm not going to name names, but we had a rookie that was just getting pelted, and it got so bad that we basically banned him from speaking. And he was getting fined so much, so we were just trying to help him out. So Chris Scheller set up after a shoot around. We had a full-on court in our dressing room, and he came in with a judge's gown. Micah Kersey was the defense attorney. Pat McCready was the prosecutor. Pretty sure it was Patty. Troy Bonterre, bringing him up. He had his like SWAT OPG uniform, and he was waving his wand on everybody, making sure for metal detection. And we had a jury, everything. And I think Kersey got him off on or got less charges anyway. But it was unbelievable, and that was all Schiller. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love it. Yeah, I mean, kangaroo court's still a thing today, and I love those.
Awesome.
Those things are the best. Who was the best athlete?
Best athlete. Back in those Rochester days, I'm going to say Casey Zaff. He was do you remember that Gary Roberts gym downtown Toronto, 7, I think it was called? See, I think it was like, it seemed like it was like $10,000 a month or something crazy. He was paying, I think he was paying like $1,000 a month, and he went to it, and man, he was already fit. Then he came back, and then he was fit, and then I think about him, and then, guys like Brody Merrill, obviously, and Dan Dawson. Those 3 come to mind for sure.
All right. I hope you don't opt out of this one, but laziest teammate.
Laziest teammate? Oh, I'll go with Scotty. I got to go with Scotty. You know what? But the funny thing about that guy is like, because we're all, that's when working out really became a thing, and no one believed that he worked out, but he would show you that he could, man. That guy was a gamer, that's for sure, but he was lazy.
Chippy. Yeah, I love it. Most likely to become a world leader.
Most likely to become a world leader. Oh.
What's up, Gavin? Gavin, where are you?
That's a throw-off one, man. That's a good one. Pass on that. I'll come back to that one. I'll try to think of that.
All right, we'll come back.
I know it's weak, but
Mr. Serious.
Mr. Serious.
24 HP. I'm 24 HP. I'm 44. My God.
We're really getting you on these.
I know, man. Well, I play with a lot of guys too, right? Let's go. I'll go with Clarky. He was a really Captain Serious guy, man. Always locked and loaded. Glenn Clark.
All right. Best dance moves.
Best dance moves, I'll go Kenny Moen. He was legit. For sure.
All right. Mr. Last Minute, or what's it called? Most likely to miss the bus, I guess. Running
Shawn Evans. Shawn Evans, without a doubt. And he came in, and I think he's still a kid, so 18 or 19, and he was a mess. And he didn't care either, so he was always late.
Favorite roommate?
Favorite roommate, we'll go Toller and I were roommates for a long time. I think Kenny Millen and I started out, and then I think we rotated the 3 of us a lot of times. But Toller would be we had our things down, man. It was like clockwork, how we worked together and who'd do what. And he was the ironer. I had to go get the ice for the beers later, et cetera, et cetera.
Least likely to stay fit after his career?
Well, I'm sure there's a bunch of us in that category, but just because it's easy, we'll say Scotty again. He's the easy one right now.
All right. Biggest nerd or big book guy, I guess. Yeah, biggest nerd.
This one I'll use. I'll give it to. I gotta go with Steve Hoare, because Steve Toll used to always chirp him about studying on the bus, and he's a smart kid. He had to get his work done.
All right, here it is. Most likely to become a world leader, prime minister, president, whatever.
Prime minister, president. I'll say Chris Schiller. I'm gonna go with that. He just keeps coming to mind because he's got it all, man. He can I don't even know how to say it. He could politic anybody to death too, and I'll give him the nod for that one.
That's awesome. I love the Evans. It's just great that they're the easy guys to go to for that. That's awesome.
Sure. Yeah.
We're gonna get into your Team Canada career and kind of playing internationally. You had a lot of success, and we won't bring up any of the silver medals, but we're going to highlight some of these golds that you won. Before we get into those gold medals, what did it mean for you to represent Team Canada and play for your country?
It's words can't describe, that feeling you get when you get to put that jersey on for the first time, and then get to go represent it. And lucky enough, getting to wear it a few times. Unbelievable feeling, and one that will never be matched or ever forgotten for sure.
Winning 2 golds in box and 1 gold in field, I gotta ask, rather than going to all of them, which one was most memorable for you?
You know what? The 06 obviously was crazy because that's the first time we beat the United States, and since '78. So that was obviously, in being on home soil, crazy, unbelievable. And but then the 07 box one was a crazy, awesome game against Iroquois that went in overtime. So for different reasons, both. But obviously the field one is more substantial because it's something that was seems that it was never going to happen, and lucky enough we've done it again as a country.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's certainly awesome to have the opportunity to represent your country, and you had so much success doing it. You won other medals as well, but I think those highlights there in the 03 and 07 box, and then the 2006 field, you said it was a huge step in lacrosse for Canadian field lacrosse. So we're going to get into a little sensitive subject here. It's your son, Tucker. For those who don't know, Tucker was Shawn's youngest son. He passed away after a lengthy 11-month battle with Burkitt's lymphoma in 2014 at the young age of 8 years old. Tucker's story caught the attention of the lacrosse world and quickly spread through social media. Tucker was very well known in social media with the saying "braver than brave." Can you kind of talk about how he got that braver than brave saying, and just kind of the impact that Tucker has had on you and your family?
Yeah. It's I guess to start with where the braver than brave saying came from. It was from a nurse, and it just stuck with because one of my aunts said something about how brave he was, and the nurse actually said, "Oh, he's braver than brave." And any of these kids you see going through any illness, but obviously we know what the cancer side looks like for these young kids that have to go through this, and they're all braver than brave, man. It's something you wouldn't wish your worst enemy on, that to go through that. But he was the one that kept us in check and kept us going and kept us on the right path for sure, staying positive. And the braver than brave thing did catch fire a little bit with well, not a little bit, but it did catch fire just on because of at a young age he was. I always say that he's probably the best lacrosse player I've seen, and he was already getting that much attention before he was sick. And you go to the rink and he's at tournaments, and people were looking for this kid that's playing first year tyke or whatever, and it was unbelievable to see this happen. He was one of those kids that you knew was gonna do big things, and him getting sick and then beating it and then coming back and he got to play in a couple of tournaments, and him playing in that last tournament in Brampton and at the Macaulay, and we thought he had the flu, and he was full of cancer, and won the championship, and that was his last lacrosse game. And I think that actually helped made that legacy bigger about being braver than brave and playing through and playing when you can and playing for those who can't and just playing, right?
Yeah, exactly. And you said he came back there, and that's kind of when everything came back. But one cool thing that I don't think too many people know about is Tucker's team ended up winning that tournament with a final score of 4-1. He had 3 of those goals in that game. And you said it, like to be fighting through something like that and to go out and have a game like that, it just shows how brave and how tough Tuck was. So we're going to talk a little bit about the Tucker out lymphoma night in Buffalo, and how it's become one of the biggest games in the NLL, and how they put on those nights.
Yeah, it's I give all the credit to Scott Loeffler, the director of ops there in Buffalo. And I was when Tucker got diagnosed. When Tucker got diagnosed, I was on the team, and I didn't even miss practice. I didn't want any of our other kids to sense that it was something different was going on. So Buffalo was an outlet for all of us going through Tucker's battle. And that first year when I got to play in it, and we had a Tucker night, and and he was there, and then for Scott Loeffler to continue to honor him and to try to help the Buffalo area and different foundations and the Roswell Park Hospital and with Sick Kids Toronto. It's honestly words can't describe how the thanks and the gratitude we have to that organization. And it is such a awesome night they put on for Tucker and all the rest of the young kids.
Yeah, no, for sure. And obviously now you see a bunch of people wearing the number 51 that your family has done. Dyson obviously wearing it at Duke, and then you see guys like Dan Littner was wearing it at one point and everything. So that's obviously a great tribute to you and your family. Obviously recently we've seen another Whitby minor lacrosse player, and Dylan Weddock, be recently diagnosed with cancer. What advice or encouragement would you give to that family?
Yeah, I just it's the power of love and the power of positivity is real, and it can carry you. It can carry you through a lot of deep dark things you have to go through, and that's definitely the advice. Actually, I work. Gina Waddick, Dylan's mom, is she runs the sports in Durham, all the school sports. So I know her quite well, and we've been in touch. Well, my wife's been in touch with her, but again, to go back, the power of love and the power of positivity is real, and you just got to keep trudging and keep believing. You can't stop believing, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And we all know how strong and how supportive the lacrosse community is, especially during difficult times like this. And we're all behind Dylan and his fight to beat this horrible disease. So one last topic on that. I was telling Dyson earlier, I remember refereeing the Nepean tournament. Toller brought his son's team in, who's Tucker's age, and he wore number 51. And you know how Toller is on the bench. He likes to scream and yell, but then you got that 51 out on the floor, and it's reality, and it hits home, and it's just so cool to see Tucker's friends carry on his legacy and how much of an impact Tucker had on everyone in this area and in the game of lacrosse itself. So it's special to see. We're going to talk. No problem. We're going to talk about your NLL coaching career now. You're currently an assistant coach for the Colorado Mammoth, and then the head coach of the Whitby Junior A Warriors. What kind of got you into coaching? Obviously, you wanted to get back to the game, but what are your kind of your hopes and stuff for your coaching career?
Yeah, coaching just always it seemed to come natural as a natural fit. Anytime I wasn't playing, and I didn't plan on coaching Dyson early, but watching one of the practices you went out to, and then my wife's like, "You can't complain," and so sure enough, I stopped complaining, and I went out and coached. And lucky enough, I got to coach him and his buddies, from paper weight all the way through, and still got there's still a few of us playing junior together, and Dice playing with them, and. So that's definitely something we're looking forward to if we can ever get back out there, is to finishing off, some of those young guys' careers together, and with the rest of our group. Lucky enough to coach. Obviously, when you're coaching Whitby minor, you get the minor major years together. So and coaching high school in Whitby, so there's lots of kids that have had the chance to coach when they're younger, and now that they're becoming young men, it's awesome to see them growing and becoming talented young up and coming lacrosse stars for the rest of the world to see soon enough too.
What are some of the big differences you have to adjust yourself between coaching with Colorado and coaching the pro level, and then going and coaching junior A in the summer?
Honestly, the biggest difference obviously with the NLL is just the time you have with your team is so limited. So it's lots of stuff has to be quick video, and then you're everything's on the fly. So it's up to the guys on that team, as you know, Jager, that you gotta catch things, and you gotta get things right away. Where junior, you can have a little bit more time because it is such a long grind, and you can let guys kind of make some mistakes and learn on the go, as opposed to NLL where it's cutthroat every week, and it's some of the guys don't have that long rope that you sometimes wish you had.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, there's just, you said it there, there's not a lot of practice time in the National Lacrosse League, and you have that much more time to develop in Junior A. And speaking about development, you've had the team for a few years now, and you guys are looking like you're going to be a very strong team. Could you see yourself ending up in a Minto Cup in the next few years?
That's definitely our goal. Obviously in Ontario, it's lots of good teams and lots of good players, and we thought last year we thought we would do, maybe could have done a little bit better, but that's the way sports goes. And we're coming into these next few years. We thought we'd be in the mix at least, right? And that's where you want to be, at least in the conversation. And then it's up to us as a team to put something together.
Yeah, exactly. That's awesome. We're gonna get into a story. Before we start the stories, I gotta Toller kind of threw you under the bus with this one. Steve Toll said, "Willie is a man of few words. He is hard to get stuff out of him." That's a quote from Steve Toll, and I think you've been pretty good so far. So we're gonna ask you one of his stories that's kind of PG. It is PG. So
Okay.
he wants you to talk about Star Wars night when the three captains came out with masks on.
Yeah, so so there's myself and Kenny Millen as well, and you go to lunch and then you go to the mall and you walk around and we're like, we gotta find something for the Star Wars night, and we end up coming across this store, and they had legit mask. We bought a Chewbacca one, and what was Kenny Millen? But the funniest thing was that Steve Toll's head is the biggest on the team, and he had to fit his big noggin into a C-3PO mask. And we didn't tell anybody until we actually came out and we ran on the floor with these masks on. So that was definitely a highlight. But the biggest highlight was watching Toller put on the C-3PO mask for sure.
Oh, that's great. That's that's hilarious. And he said the crowd was absolutely loving it when you guys came out.
Nuts. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
especially with all the Star Wars. There's so many Star Wars fans there with all their gear on. So, you got to give it for the fans, right? Do it for the fans.
Yeah, exactly. That's what lacrosse is all about, is growing the game and making it entertaining for the fans. So we're going to get into our final segment here. As you know, you've been around the game for a long time, and you've probably seen a lot of abuse towards the officials in the game of lacrosse. So what Jake and I always do, we're trying to promote the referees, and we're going to ask you who your favorite referee is and why.
Okay, I think I'm not good at this one thing, right? So I'm gonna probably name a couple guys. Off the top, guys come to my head. Mark Ardonio. I think he's an awesome ref. Lots of patience, and Czech Couture was the same way. Very very poised and understood the game and allowed guys to let some steam off and just they knew when to say enough's enough. But the one guy that really comes to my mind is Gary Martin. He was never got to ref in the NLL, but you want to talk about a guy with poise and class, man. And those are words that usually don't come. You don't put with a ref, but he understood the flow of the game, and he could calm everybody down. Everyone's you're gonna go off and you're gonna think you got wrong. But the biggest thing with him, I think, was he would just tell you flat out, like, I didn't see it or I missed it, and you're like, that would shut people up right away, right? Yeah, him for sure. I think I put him at the top of the list as one of my favorite refs and best refs for sure.
Oh, that's awesome. You've had a Hall of Fame lacrosse career, and now you're into coaching very heavily. Is there any advice that you could give to the younger players or even some coaches on how to maybe limit the abuse towards the officials?
Yeah, I think it's I'm not a big I don't like it at all at the minor level. It's I don't think the players have garnered that. You're not old enough to you still have to just be quiet and just play, right? And let the, hopefully let the coaches do it in a proper way. And, everyone still can get out of hand. You gotta limit those out of hand moments. And I think it's this day and age, and I think it's just the way of the world is that everybody gets caught up in what they're doing, especially in the pressure that some of the coaches, and I'm not making an excuse for any coaches, but the pressure that you get from maybe other parents, et cetera, it's all a big bullying point. And the fact that we have, it seems like there's thousands of minor lacrosse teams, and now there's thousands more games. So there's going to be, and with social media, you hear the bad parts, but there's so many more games that happen without any incidents, right? So I think that for coaches, just keep your outbursts as few and far between as you can, and make sure that you understand, especially when it's a younger kids reffing. And as you get into junior, major, and NLL, I think some of the onus does have to go on the refs as well. There has to be a good balance, and it's you see the junior refs in the summertime, and I think it's just there's so few of them, and they're just getting run rampant, and they're reffing 7 games in a week, and it's tough on them. So, their patience is a little shorter, and then you have the coaches who have put in all the work. Their patience gets shorter, so then it's just it's a recipe for explosion. So I think both sides just have to kind of balance that out and come together, and just I think somewhere like the old days where the refs would come up and you shoot the breeze for a few minutes and just talk about and get things out beforehand, and then kind of come over and just nip stuff in the bud before it gets too bad. I think there's not enough respect that way on both sides, but I think that the refs aren't willing to listen as much as they used to as well. And I think that's part of the issue, especially at the older level for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And you made a very good point there. Like the old days, that everyone used to come together and make the game a lot easier. And I think that communication factor between players and coaches to the officials is something extremely important for our game, and it'll only benefit and limit the abuse towards the officials. So, Shawn, we really appreciate you coming on here and talking with us. You've had a heck of a career, and we're excited to watch you coach for many years to come.
I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me, for sure. Lots of fun. Yeah, thanks, boys.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Sticks and Picks Lacrosse podcast. A reminder to check out lacrosseunlimited.com, where you will find all your lacrosse needs. A special thanks to True Lacrosse for all their support in growing the game of lacrosse and making some of the best equipment available on the market for all lacrosse players. Don't forget to follow our social media pages on Twitter and Instagram at SticksPicksLax and on Facebook at Sticks and Picks Lacrosse. There you will find some awesome lacrosse content. Be sure to check out Global Lacrosse Summit being held virtually from May 19th to 30th. Over 50 lacrosse experts will be talking all things lacrosse, including both the men's and women's field and box lacrosse games. It is free of charge, but there are limited spots available. Be sure to sign up and choose your favorite interviews. The Sticks and Picks Lacrosse is proud to support the growth of the creator's game. Our next Play Until the Whistle guest will be this Saturday. It will be Ontario lacrosse official Mike Sullivan, and he will be sharing his story about being a lacrosse referee. Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoyed.